Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on the next episode of our International SEO series. We're joined today by Rejoice, who's going to be talking to us about Nigeria. So, Rejoice, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this series. It's quite cool, actually.
Yeah, to be honest, I really wanted it to be like a series where everybody from different corners of the world had their voice heard and it just wasn't kind of, the same people over and over again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much again for agreeing to do it, and really excited to hear what you've got to say.
Thank you.
So should we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm focusing on international SEO in Nigeria and mostly, going to cover different things when it comes to SEO in Nigeria. I think when we speak about search and we speak about international SEO, we do have to have some sort of understanding about that country, regarding like cultural differences, languages, because all of those things does impact consumer behavior. And if we are going to do SEO, SEO is very user focused, and we have to think about consumer behavior in search. So it's quite fascinating because even though I grew up in London, but just sort of interacting and knowing about the, Nigeria as a whole in terms of SEO and, kind of speaking to people who are in Nigeria and who are interested in SEO, the research was really fun to do. And just my understanding around the culture has I've brought everything together. So yeah, so just a brief breakdown about me. So again, so I'm 28. I am Nigerian born, so I was born there, and I grew up in London. And I've sort of spoken around different topics around content, around diversity and inclusion. So this specific topic about SEO in Nigeria, it is quite deep to me because that is my heritage. But also it's fascinating because you get to understand how international SEO plays out when it comes to different countries, when it comes to different parts of the world. So that's just a brief introduction about me. I'm also a freelance SEO and content strategist. So the most important information we need to know, I think, where we should start off is understanding, the advertising regulations in Nigeria and understanding what that means. So recently, there was a new guideline provided by the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria called ARCON, and they announced that 75% of the local content in all ads and marketing has to be directed at the Nigerian market. So what this means is that they are looking for any multinational brands that wants to sort of put advertising ads or marketing ads out there. It has to sort of use Nigerian talent and be produced, and Nigerian talent or producers in ads that target the Nigerian market. So if you are going to target the Nigerian market, they want you to, I guess, build on the representation of that country. So utilizing the people. A lot of times what, in advertising in Nigeria, when multinational brands sort of advertise, they always use people that are not Nigerians. So there's not that really representation for Nigerians anyway. So they see other people from other countries in these ads that are, meant to be for the Nigerian market or meant to be for Nigerian people, but they're not seeing themselves in that as well. So I guess the way we can look at it is that, well, really and truly, if we are going to push content out there, be it organically, be it, social media campaigns and stuff like that, we have to represent that market that we're going into. We have to understand what is important to them. So this guideline, I was quite excited for it because I think it's great because I think it focuses on representation, and I think that's the whole crux of it. So it is now mandatory to shoot ads in Nigeria and include Nigerians as well, and allows for like post-production and outside the country, and amongst other things. So you can produce it outside, but if you are going to target Nigerian market, you need to sort of include Nigerians in a certain way. So these are the most guidelines, and so Aquan sort of gave a few bullet points about how you can go about doing this. They said that the ambience should reflect Nigeria as much as possible. And even though this is talking about advertising and marketing, if we take this and apply it to search, when I read that, they wanted that ambience to reflect Nigeria, that goes back into content. adverts and stuff like that are content, whether you're producing content from a visual standpoint or maybe blog post or maybe search, it should also reflect that particular market that you are in. There's no point writing content that only British people, for example, can relate to, and you're trying to push that to the Nigerian market. That content has to be specific to Nigerian consumer behavior and such, which I will cover in a while to kind of get you thinking about what that means and how that looks like. Models and voiceovers artists must be Nigerian. Again, key thing, because I think they want to sort of create work in Nigeria. So the guidelines itself are there to really get brands to think about, if you're going to create content, how are you representing that country that you're trying to push the content to? And we can take this and actually apply it to SEO.
I think
So
that's so
yeah,
cool. Sorry to interrupt. I just think
no, it's
that's really,
fine.
really, really cool because like it makes so much sense, doesn't it? You know, you've got to have the content that represents the culture. You have to make sure that the local people feel kind of like you're
Yeah.
talking to them. I wish like other countries would bring that in because it would make my job as an international marketer so much easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I do as well, because I think what it kind of forces brands to do is learn about that market, learn about that people, learn about the culture. Because if we do want to create content, it is, it's such a hit and miss, and sometimes complete miss, because you are pushing out a product, for example, you're pushing out a topic, for example, that the market that you're trying to push it into, they don't really care about that, or there's a cultural norm, or a particular word means something completely different. So if we're learning and if we're including people from those countries that you're trying to sort of market to, then you will avoid making silly mistakes that a simple research could have avoided. So I really do like this guideline. I think it's such a great thing to do, because I think it will start to make brands think and showcase Nigeria as a, quite holistically, quite truthful, and actually create content that is targeted to Nigerians and not just, everyone in general.
Yeah, I love that completely.
No, absolutely. So even like things about search, so SEO being a search focused thing. So I sort of split it out into things that we should consider when we are talking about SEO and search. The main thing we should consider is cultural differences. And that's, down to languages. So English is the main language in Nigeria. Not a lot, but mostly everyone speak English. But obviously, if you go into deeper parts of Nigeria, you'll start to hear less English and more of that of the native language there. But generally, in like cities like Lagos, Abuja, it's English that are spoken, and that's sort of spread across. But we do also have other things called pidgin. Pidgin is like a slang type of English. So it's basically, we call it broken English. So it's like how we sort of utilize Nigerian keywords, Nigerian slang, and we've mixed it into the English language, and we have pidgin. If you go onto bbc.com/pidgin, the content is written in pidgin and not fully English, which is great, because again, it shows that BBC are trying to actually target the people properly, because they've utilized the kind of language that is spoken in Nigeria. And for them to do this, I'm very much assuming they have Nigerian writers, they have Nigerian journalists to kind of break down the language in that way. So but I think if we're doing SEO, if you're doing your keyword research and all those stuff, English is a safe bet. You can do those terms in English, but some words might mean something differently. I mean, Nigeria has over 500 languages found in it, so it's very much hit or miss. I speak English, but I also speak a bit of Igbo, which is my native language, and I grew up with Igbo as well. I wouldn't search in Igbo, except if I'm trying to find a specific thing relating to my tribe. But most people mostly search in English, which is absolutely fine to sort of stick to. Again, another thing to consider is dialect. But I think this is if you're creating content on a video and you want to sort of be true to the language. Different languages have different dialects. Different states will have different dialects and how they speak. And a lot of languages in Nigeria are quite tonal. So, a word, there might be three words that sound the same, but the tones are different, which will be very much highlighted in those different tribes. So again, creating content, whether it is videos, whether it's a reel on Instagram, all those things, and you want to do Instagram SEO, there are tonal languages, and that is down to, again, with different alphabets. Like if we look at the French language, there's different types of ways to write the letter E with an acute, E with a, down facing acute. That's the same thing in Nigeria. Sometimes the O can have a dot underneath, and that's a different tone on how you say the word O. So little things like this we kind of have to think about when it comes to search, when it comes to SEO, how we type it, and such like that. So that's quite key to point out.
That's really, really interesting as well, because like managing a country with over 500 languages, if you really, really want to deep dive and go into specific parts of the country, must be
Yeah.
tough.
Very, very tough, and it's not easy because within my language we don't have 12 alphabets. We have like 26. So because of different tones, so
Oh, wow.
it's not like from A to Z or 12. It's like literally 26. It can, and some languages can have like loads of different alphabets, but it's just about understanding. So I think a safer bet for marketers doing SEO is just English, and you will get far with that. That's absolutely fine. So when we do talk about search, again, user intent. So when I was doing my research, I was looking at, okay, when we're talking about keyword research and creating content for user intent, user behavior, what intent would be the focal point? So I would not necessarily use commercial based keywords or commercial intent based keywords to market to audiences, only because I think that's more valuable from a business point of view. So if you're maybe doing it business to business, you can do commercial keywords. But if you're trying to market wider audiences, like the everyday people, I will focus on navigational. And that could be, Lagos Airport. That's more of a navigational keyword, or informational or transactional, buy plane tickets, all of those things. I would say that's the intent I would focus on, especially on mobile search. Not a lot of people, I don't believe, have desktops or laptops or tablets in their homes, but I think the majority have mobiles, so mobile phones. So mobile search should be the focus. You should always try to optimize your SEO or your website for mobile first, and I think that's anyway how Google wants to go down anyway. So Google is trying to be mobile first because, again, we're seeing it grow ever so quickly.
I think that's the case as well. I've seen that in a lot of different markets around the world, that it is very much kind of like mobile first
Yeah.
everywhere. And
Yeah.
I think in markets that are up and coming, who are going through this amazing period of growth right now, really, really, really target those mobiles, because people have kind of skipped the desktop phase completely.
No, absolutely. No, I agree with that. I think, yeah, desktop is a bit, hit and miss. Everyone's out and about. Everyone has a phone. Everyone's on a mobile. Smartphones are literally so popular. So I always will stick to that as well. So one more thing, so other things to consider about search, the market in itself. So what's the market like? So search trends will differ sometimes to the world trends when it comes to Nigeria. And I say this because certain trends that might be found in Nigeria, it's not going to be the same. So you can't think of the world as one size fits all. Certain things are more popular, certain trends are more popular. For example, I don't think, like right now in Nigeria, there's this trend on TikTok where you're walking in slow motion. You're walking on the spot, but it's in slow motion. I've not seen that trend elsewhere. And that's specific to Nigeria. So loads of people are creating videos about that. So you have to, again, deep dive into what is trending in this part of the world. And, just because certain things are trending in the UK as a multinational brand, I wouldn't just automatically assume that's going to be the same thing in Nigeria, because sometimes it might take a while for people to catch up. And how trends maneuver as such. So that's something to think about. But a way to combat this is do your qualitative analysis, do your research. And I'll say, qualitative analysis is down to the needs of the people, the needs of the market, and purchase systems. Purchase system is quite interesting. I think when it comes to SEO, if you're an e-commerce website, an e-commerce brand, and you have optimized your keywords, transactional is great in its content. So, and it's now leading to conversions, but you're seeing it drop off in conversions. Have you thought about what purchase systems do they use in Nigeria? Not not everyone has PayPal. Well, I don't really think a lot of Nigerians have PayPal. So maybe a PayPal option is not, it's not the best. And think about the how people, buy things online, and how people, a lot of people have bank accounts to do online purchases. So you have to ask yourself all this analysis and all these questions to kind of find out what is going on. So, how people purchase things. So I don't think I'm ever able to send my cousins any money through PayPal. It has to be through the likes of World Remit and stuff like that. So bank transfers might not be the same thing. So if you're understanding that, then if you're e-commerce brands, the research into purchase systems is very, very vital. You don't want to create great transactional content for conversions but fail because you have not thought about how do people actually buy products.
That's so important as well. And I think people focus a lot on content, but then forget about the logistics of kind of things like having in-country support and having
Yeah.
support who speak the language, making sure it's in the right currency, making sure it's
Yeah.
done the right way. So
Yeah,
really, really
absolutely.
good point there.
I agree. Even the currency stuff is very important. I think there's two types of currency. There's only two currencies we really utilize in Nigeria is the naira, which is the normal everyday currency. When you live in Nigeria, people buy in naira, they pay in naira. But sometimes when it comes to like banks and stuff, some people actually receive money through dollars, the USD dollars, and it gets converted. So if I sent money over to my any of my family in Nigeria, it will automatically transfer it into dollars, my pounds into dollars, and then they will, withdraw it into naira. So those are kind of the two main currencies. But naira, if you're doing a Google My Business profile and your e-commerce store, I would say, if you're selling products, it's your safest bet is to have that product, the pricing in naira, because that's what people understand. Not everyone can do the conversions as quickly as possible. So saying it is $2, someone will have to do the conversions. But if you just say it is, 2,000 naira, that is a lot easier to know what for them to expect. So that's a great point, actually, in terms of currency. Um, so web load times. So page speed, core web vitals, absolutely important in search and SEO. We want faster websites. But I guess the good thing, but I wouldn't necessarily say this, you should bank on this, is that Nigerian audience can be a lot patient with slower sites purely because the connectivity in the internet in Nigeria is not as fast or great as it is in the West. So they are used to slower sites. But I would say just because you understand search and SEO and core web vital and ranking abilities, faster websites are always ideal. Even though the audience might be more patient with slower websites, faster websites should be your first point to go to than slower website. But it is good to understand that you might not get quicker drop-offs in terms of audiences because the site is slow. When it comes to Nigerian audiences, you might not compared to someone who lives in England. So for me, I so impatient. I can't do a slow website. I would completely leave. but but what I found is my mum, she would stay on for a bit longer. And I was looking at my mum like, it's not working, and go off the site. And she's like, no, just wait for a little bit. I'm just like, no. So it's one of those things. So it's quite interesting to kind of see the differences. So content. Um, you can't have SEO without content. You can't have SEO without different formats of content, videos, blogs, all of those things. Nigerians love content. We love it. We love any form of content, whether it's written, whether it's in a video, a reel, whatever. We just love content. We also love content that includes and uses other Nigerians, such as our celebrities, our artists, influencers. It speaks about Nigerians, and you can see quite a lot of reward in high consumptions of those content. It may be traffic because you have actually targeted and utilized Nigerian people. But also with that content, we also love accuracy. there's been so many times where content has been written directly to the Nigerian market where it's not accurate and true to us as people. And that's very key. So when we're creating any content or content strategies, I think about diversifying the content, and especially with SEO, the beauty of it is you don't have to stick to just a blog post. You can diversify your content, and you can actually ask yourself, how can I utilize the Nigerian authenticity in my content, because I want my audience to actually relate. I want my audience to be so invested in the content I'm creating. And if you're using the right keywords, the right language, the right tone, and you're again following the guidelines that Akon said, using Nigerians in your either marketing or whatever, I think you'll be absolutely fine. Which kind of feeds into a medium. Search or the web is not as popular as social media. Now, so social media in Nigeria at the moment is sort of bigger than web, with Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all of those social media platforms, WhatsApp, they are so huge. You will see a lot of Nigerians utilizing social media. And that is a great opportunity for people who know how to do SEO for social media, SEO for Instagram, SEO for Twitter, SEO for Facebook ads, all of those things. I think we can combine the two. So this can be a great way to whatever content you create via website or via whatever blog post that you have, the idea and concept of repurposing it, I think will sell really, really well on within the Nigerian market. So you have a blog, take a snippet from that blog, repurpose it onto social media, whether you repurpose it as a reel, as a TikTok 1 minute video, as a infographic, for example. I think that would be a greater hit, because then what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep it consistent, and you're regurgitating the information, but it's fresher, it's more interesting. Content should be fun, and social media allows you to create digestible content. Website, you can go quite long form, but social media is digestible, quick, snappy, and you start to see people come about, especially social media. I generally believe Nigerians love hashtags. They use it so much, so they love the hashtag. So absolutely utilize all of those things, which is which is really, really interesting.
That is super interesting, because I'm finding as well sometimes in the West, if you look at Ireland, for example, Facebook is going down in popularity, but it's going up in popularity, for example, like with my mum's age people. But it's really cool to see, like, for example, in China as well, they're massive into their social media as well. With Nigeria, it's cool to see that as well.
Yeah.
That,
it is the fastest way for information. Social media is the fastest way to get information. During the recent movement, the End SARS movement, people are being updated via social media. And interestingly, again, I'll touch on this later on. The one avenue the government in Nigeria tries to stop the spread of information, it wasn't through websites. It was to limit social media usage. So that tells you the vast majority of people in Nigeria using this platform, and it's such a great tool to sort of, I guess, market to them, do the SEO on social media, because there's social media for SEO as well. So it's absolutely wonderful. And again, going back to consumer behavior, Nigerians are loyal to preferred brands. If they love your brand, they will stick with it. So, and that really tells you about how, again, doing that market research, making sure that your brand is relevant to them. Again, the quality of your brand, how you market that brand, all of those things feed into building loyalty and consumer loyalty. And I think if you consider Nigerians in your content, if you consider how content maneuvers within Nigerians as a whole, you are building that brand loyalty. So, I think my mum doesn't really shift from certain types of brands that she uses, whether it's cooking, whether it's skincare, whether it's, we have this thing when it comes to, if we find the right one, that's where we're gonna stay. So that's a great thought to know about.
it really does pay off then to follow all of these instructions, and then you'll get
Mhm.
clients or customers for life.
Absolutely, and that's what you want. I think SEO, even though it's ranking, even though we're looking at crawlability, we're looking at, all of these nice things, but ultimately for brands, you do want to attract that new customers, and you want to retain loyal customers, and that's how you sort of do it. So when we come to SEO, so if you want to talk about SEO in terms of industry based and the industries that in Nigeria that are utilizing it, from my research, the common industries that kept coming up was real estate, law firms, e-commerce, healthcare, and I think quite focused agricultural tech and construction. These industries benefit a lot from SEO because I do think e-commerce again is to the audience. Real estate, they need more audiences, and I think real estate in Nigeria, there's so many houses being built. There's a lot of land that people want to build on and build properties on. So again, if you're the real estate agent, you will benefit from local SEO around the area. You'll benefit from, and if you're a law firm, again, you want to utilize and create content that is, reaching out to the right people, construction, all of those things. So I think working within SEO, is good if you're an agency or multinational brand or agency in another country trying to maybe, have Nigerian clients within your client portfolio. These sort of industries would be great because again, you can bring in that educational factor into that as well. I touched on earlier about demographics. So Nigeria has like 11 cities. There's quite 11 cities with a population of 1 million in each of them. So if you think about one city having over 1 million people, 11 of those, you're now, that market pool is huge. So you need to learn how to sort of diversify. Lagos is the largest, is where most people are. Um, but that doesn't mean that, I guess the marketing around English will still be utilized as well. Trends, I would say voice search. So voice search didn't really kick off the way it should have kicked off in the West. I think voice search, we thought, oh, voice search is this new way of searching, but voice search just turned out to be more of a command than search. So, but voice search in Nigeria is predicted to really grow among Gen Z by 2025. But because again, how voice search works, and I don't think voice search sometimes is created for developing countries because language and dialects can change what the output of the command or the output of that voice search. So I think it's quite steady, and I wouldn't focus on it as an SEO expert. I wouldn't focus on voice search because again, when it comes to international markets, you have to consider not just the language, but how people talk and the dialect that they're using. Is this technology, this voice search, does it actually suit people of different dialects and different tones? Because sometimes I've heard my mum utilize voice search, sometimes doesn't understand what she's, the dialect that she uses it. And that's, so she doesn't use it as much, which is fine. Another trend when you're talking about, creating content strategy within SEO or creating any SEO strategy elsewhere is influencers. Nigerians have loads of influencers, loads, and they are seen as thought leaders in their fields. So this is a great thing to tap into if you are creating fun, quirky content, e-commerce brands. If you're an e-commerce brand or any industry, the use of influencers are great. And the common tactics the influencers use is creating comedy skits that helps build the awareness. One thing about Nigerians is they love a good comedy. They love a good laughing show. So that's, you utilize that to create the content, which is again, even if you're writing long form content, the tone of voice, it can be quite fun, can be quite quirky, can be quite interesting. So you do have a space to play around the different brand tones that you want to use in Nigeria. There are people who really like a formal, but majority of people sometimes are relaxed. If it's nice and quirky and funny, you will still be able to get through. But as well, content, we still love a good high quality content. We love content that's very high quality. And again, that aligns with Google's algorithm with the quality content and how you rank. So even though you are understanding the market, just because it's not address to or advertise to the West, for example, other developing countries, they still deserve high quality content. If you want to rank there, that's the kind of mindset you have to sort of go down in. So working with companies, how is it like as an SEO person or SEO expert or agency to work with companies? One thing that really that I do think is important to highlight in Nigeria is that even though maybe let's say by 2016, 2017, like a few years ago, SEO kind of entered the conversation in Nigeria. I think that's when like the recent CEO of Google, he came over and did like a talk and whatever. So a lot of companies beginning to understand what SEO is and why SEO is needed. So that's great. But there's still a bit of educational aspects that you might still need to do when you're working with companies and you're trying to build on the SEO knowledge or trying to build on the SEO strategy. You know, it's not commonly understood, but I think the higher up you go in terms of the bigger organizations, it will be. But if you're working with more SMEs, it might not be a full understanding or common understanding amongst SMEs. So there is growth in small businesses due to because of the education of SEO. But you have, facts and figures like digital advertising in Nigeria was valued at 8.2 billion last year. So there is growth. There is budget. It's about how you target and how you sort of push in terms of educating them on what SEO is and the value. You know, in Nigeria, the most common search engine is Google, but people do still utilize Yahoo and Bing. But I would say Google is the central focus. And there is growth in ad spend. So whether you're working with a PPC team doing ads or conversions or in terms of paid search and you want to combine it with SEO, there's still growth there that you can still understand what keywords are converting in Nigeria from a paid search perspective to then apply those keywords in your SEO strategy. So there's still a good way to sort of go about it. There is still a misconception on how long SEO should last. But I guess you can say it's not specific to Nigeria because I think everyone has a misconception about SEO. I think SEO can be
Oh
done
yeah.
in 3 months, and
Oh yeah,
no.
no, I've had people who are like, it's been a week and I Googled myself and why am I not on page one? And you're just like, well.
Yeah, precisely. You're just thinking, okay, that's not how it works, but sure. So yeah, you're still going to face that in Nigeria. And I think when you're working with companies in Nigeria to reach to go on about the SEO, consider the economic state of Nigeria. Consider the type of audience that they want to sort of market to, that company, that what's the audience of that company. And also because again, we did say social media is really popular. Maybe add in how social media and SEO can complement each other in your SEO strategies. Maybe use that as a selling point. A lot of these brands will have a social media platform or social media awareness to combine the two. And from the graph, that I found online, you can see that entertainment, telecommunications, retail, real estate, as we said earlier, these are the companies that are utilizing ad spend and is growing. So these are, ways to work with them. But I would say you can also see opportunity in the smaller sectors such as education and training or clothing or e-commerce, those smaller niches, you can still kind of work with them and educate them from an SEO perspective. So SEO talent. I think this is my favorite part of it because I think there is SEO talent in Nigeria, but from what I have seen, the common SEO skill is copywriting. So a lot of the copywriters, they do know SEO, they're learning about SEO, but they are great writers. They really can write because they understand SEO and they write for global brands and all those things. There's still a gap in the amount of people I think who do technical SEO or content strategy or outreach. There's still a gap in that sense, but those things can be trained. But one thing about it is, and I think it's not commonly taught, is that there's loads of coders There's loads of software developers in Nigeria, but they don't understand SEO. So I think that is just a gap where we could have great technical SEO experts who already know coding if we teach them the SEO part and kind of combine those two skill sets. So that there's those opportunities there. But if you're looking for great copywriters in Nigeria, you loads. But the industry that these copywriters mostly focus on, and I think it's just because more of a interest and more of a exposure and money wise, is B2B and SaaS companies. They tend to write for those companies. It does expose them to quite a lot of opportunities, which is great. So I think I know way well enough SaaS and B2B copywriters in Nigeria. But the one thing is there is a lack of SEO training courses, because they're not as affordable, for Nigerians anyways. So there's a lack of those training courses. But I do think once that gap is closed, it would be a lot better. Companies who hire globally, they are sometimes unwilling to hire SEO talent in Nigeria because they don't want to pay them fairly. That's just what I have seen. And I think that's just been a common conversation about the SEO market in Nigeria, the not being paid fairly as anyone would in other parts of the world. And I think that is where the difficulty sort of comes from. But luckily, they are communities, and some of them are based in the UK. I'm not sure about communities in Nigeria specifically, but they are communities that provide resources to close the gap in training. So Be Digital UK or FCDC and Women in Tech SEO have those platforms from people all over the world to join in and take on the resources. And and a lot of Nigerians are reliant on these communities to give them access to things such as such as tools, or such as tickets to events, so they can continuously learn and understand SEO in a deeper level.
That's so cool that there are these organizations out there that are doing that. And I've seen some of their work and it's amazing. So I think the more support that we can give, the more stuff that we can do. Like, I can't wait to see what Nigeria has to
Right?
offer in like 5-10 years time, because it's going to be amazing.
It's going
We're
to
all
be
going to be in
absolutely
trouble.
brilliant. I think so too. I think, once we get the trainings for people in Nigeria, I think it will absolutely be, superb. So when it comes to the labour market, so a few stats that I think, stood out to me is that 57% of SEO specialists work in Lagos. They work in one of the biggest cities in Nigeria, and a lot of them work remotely. Remote working is great. And I think if you are going to hire people in Nigeria, let's say if you do have an actual office as a global brand in Nigeria, I would say remote working best suits Nigerians, because the traffic is insane. No one wants to be stuck in traffic for that long. So remote working is always the best. Of course, you have things like internet and stuff like that, and but the people, a lot of companies in Nigeria provide incentives, like they pay for your internet or they give you accommodation, all of those things. But remote working, I think, is perfect. Ahrefs is is a popular tool in the Nigerian labour market, followed by SEMrush. So they know of those tools. In terms of like Google-based tools, Search Console Analytics, like the SEO labour market, they know of those tools. So they're not foreign to those tools or don't understand it. A lot of them have done the Google certifications, so that is perfectly fine. And a lot of the websites are built on WordPress. When I speak to like software developers in Nigeria, a lot of them are really good at building websites on WordPress. I don't know if some of them, I think it's of recent, some of them are being exposed to hosting platforms like Wix, Webflow, all of those things. But WordPress tends to be the common theme across the board. And yeah, this is just a few economic and societal factors to consider. National days, again, when you're creating seasonal content, there are really cool national days in Nigeria. Nigeria Independence Day. There's also national days as pertaining to certain religion. So I know those of the Muslim faith have a few national days. Again, if you're targeting content to the Muslim community, again, I think utilizing the national days to create, content or evergreen content that hardly changes in SEO. Those will be quite important. Think about the different elections, and sometimes there's a general election, and sometimes there's state-specific elections. So again, if you're looking at local SEO or local SEO content, for example, you want to consider the days of elections and how that's going to impact search or how that's going to impact audiences and stuff. We spoke about cultural differences, and sometimes it can be cultural differences in the type of way how people maneuver compared to Lagos versus emo states as such. So the cultures can be different. And again, it can be different because of different people or different tribes that inhabit those areas. Lagos is like a melting pot, is a huge melting pot. It is predominantly known as a Yoruba state, which is a tribe of people, but it is a melting pot of people, of different people in Nigeria. Whereas if you go down to the eastern parts of Nigeria, it's predominantly by Igbo people. So if you are thinking about creating content or SEO, your audiences might be split into not just states-wise, but also tribes, but also languages and all of those things. So something to consider in cultural differences. There is a huge, massive influence on influence from the American culture in Nigeria. Again, it makes sense if the currency conversion is USD. So the huge, massive American influence that, a lot of people grew up in Nigeria, watched quite a lot of American shows, American music, all of those things. So even the way that certain words they say are more American based than any other place as well. So that is something to sort of have in the back of your mind, how they might spell certain words, they might follow the American way. But I would say, to me, that's always interesting that there's a massive influence of the American culture, even though Nigeria was colonized by the Brits. So it's just like, where did the American culture come from? So that's just really funny to me. But you will find that there. And there is a lack of common infrastructure. So if you are trying to target or work within a niche of like pharmacy and healthcare, not a lot of people have access to those infrastructures, or not a lot of people have, the funds for it. So how you think about content, how you raise awareness to those brands through SEO. Again, think about what are the common infrastructures or the lack thereof in Nigeria, that if we are trying to raise brand awareness, we need to understand our starting point. There's power cuts. So there's power cuts so regularly. So if you're targeting desktop users, think about that. Sometimes you might just not be online because of power cut. There is corruption, unfortunately, is in Nigeria. There's corruption, so that can impact search, or impact things like, again, SEO, social media SEO. So when, they decided to lock off, stop all access to Twitter, for example, a few years ago, that could impact any strategies you have. But, and VPN is used a lot. I know so many Nigerians who have VPNs on their phone. My cousin has VPN on his phone and he lives here because he's just so used to having a VPN. So again, VPNs are used because people don't have some Nigerians don't have access to certain shows or certain content from, because they're not in another country, so they use VPNs to do that. And again, Nigerians are very not superstitious, we're very careful sometimes in terms of what is true, what isn't, what's a scam and what isn't. So how you position your content, how you strategize your content in content strategy or SEO is quite important, because you got to understand that people might have a VPN, so some of your users might miss out on the content because they're not being served it, because it's not necessarily based in that market. And that's just mostly me. I think that's it about Nigeria and international SEO. And I really hope people find this interesting and how to sort of think about maneuvering in Nigeria. But you can find me on like Twitter at Reggie8, or find me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so, so much for joining us. I mean, that was absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy it as well.